I've been struggling to put together exactly why I wanted to talk about this series so much lately. On one hand, you've got and on the other, so yeah, as you can imagine, I'm a little torn. This Grisaia has a lot to offer. It's quite the complex series, a lot of ups and downs, lefts and rights, confusions, and subterfuges. But there's a lot more to it than just being confused all the time, I suppose. It actually has some interesting stuff inside of it that I don't think a lot of other stories do very well. I suppose the biggest dichotomy between the points is that, yeah, it's an H game, or an HVN, an arrow game, whatever you want to call it, which is already off-putting for most people. VNs in general, especially VNs, have a really bad stigma of being really just kind of a conduit for, the H. But this one does a lot more than that. I feel like it's actually used fairly well, relatively competently. Which isn't something I think you'd understand after reading its store page quickly, because, it's a pretty simple premise. It's transfer student to a new high school with a convenient assortment of anime trope heroines, and they're all attractive, single, and thirsty. What are the chances? There's really not much special about that, but underneath all that is a bear trap. Grisaia really doesn't mess around when it doesn't want to. It can be extremely fickle, but also very, very romantic. And exciting. And maybe just a bit crazy. Very crazy. Anyway, so for the opening of Grisaia, you're going to spend like 30 hours just relaxing. High school hijinks, let it play out, enjoy some extremely competent slice of life, some healthy comedy. Really just overall get to know your characters very well, understand their interests, their hobbies, their habits, secrets. Really just get everything nailed down and understand them as people. That is until you start on one of their routes. You see, once you start to actually invest yourself in one of the girls, pretty much all hell breaks loose. And you kind of realize that nice, relaxing environment that the VN prepared for 30 hours beforehand wasn't really there just to make you feel good. It was kind of there to set you up for failure. It was to make you feel even worse when everything's literally on fire in some cases. And it's going to hit you pretty hard because that tender space that was developed, it feels very wrong. It feels defiled when everything's just burning. Everything's just in disarray. You see, in many cases, Grisaia isn't very kind to you, and it spares little imagination in its narrative or visual depictions of terror, and a lot of the backgrounds and the backstories of our heroines are very tragic, not just kind of like a soft, oh, she fell down and cut her leg. Like, no, I had terribly abusive parents, I've had pretty much a shitty life my entire time, and now I'm dealing with, pretty much all of them contemplating suicide. And it's like, Jesus, who wrote this? Someone find them help, because they have serious problems, and there's several authors for accuracy's sake. It just feels like every heroine is a bomb primed to go off. And then we have our, proactive, certainly, but our mysterious and proactive protagonist, Yuji, just kind of sitting there with the player pliers and not really knowing what to do, because he does his best to defuse these things, but he's not very good at it. But to be fair, no one really would be. It's a very tricky situation to deal with. Even if I think he can get kind of annoying, as I somewhat mentioned, because he's supposed to be more of a self-insert than an everyman, but sometimes he just kind of pushes that line a little too much, where he's more annoying than helpful, and it's just a bit strange. Overall, it's very funny and he's very clever, but sometimes it just pushes the line a little bit, and it's going to be more up to taste on that one, certainly. Speaking more of the characters in detail, of course, we have our assortment of, was it 5 girls? Yeah, 5 girls. We have Amane, who is the motherly mom fetish character. We have Sachi, who is the more maidly character, and also very snarky, which I kind of love. I really like that about her personality, how she'll just shoot back at someone every now and then. It's very funny. It's done very, very well. We have Michiru, who is more ditzy, kind of not really know what's going on. She plays the pseudo-Soon character. She tries to be tsundere, and it really doesn't work too well, and then sometimes she actually is. It's an interesting mix. It's a very odd character mold. So that one is probably the most out of line. It feels more like a parody than just following the tropes, which is actually good. And it's done well. The character overall is also one of the most tragic, so it's good. And we have, moving forward, of course, we have Makina, who's just there for the pedophiles, let's be honest. Or I suppose more accurately, petite women, if you like that, which, it's whatever. Has one of the funniest routes in the game. Actually, probably the best route, because it's extremely long, yes, and this game is very bulky in its word count. It is extremely long. I'm going to estimate it around 70 to 80 hours. if you do everything, which you probably will once you even get through one of the routes. You'll be like, well, I need to know everything else, because it really sucks you in. It does a good job of that. And then, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, and the next one is Yumiko. And Yumiko is kind of annoying. I don't enjoy Yumiko that much. I know a lot of people are kind of into that. She's just supposed to be like the traditional Japanese woman, perfect in pretty much every way, no real flaws except kind of reserved, and it's just like, the problem is, she does not jive with me overall, and I think her story is kind of the weakest out of the bunch, so it's like, I know there's a pretty strong fan base behind her too, so I'm gonna get a lot of flack for that, but it's not my styling, whatever. What are you gonna do, fight me? Fight me, go for it. And then, of course, I suppose the main character, Yuji, who is our more mysterious character. He's supposed to be, like I said, more of an insert. He plays more of a straight man for most of the story. He's really just there to move the story forward, but he only does it when he feels like it. It's a strange thing. But overall, he's kind of a pleasure to read. He's, as you'll understand, let's just call him a military buff, which I am as well, so it's very fun to read up on these little facts. Anyway, for better or worse, Yuji kind of delves into the world of, or the backstories and the, conditions and situations that our heroines have, and it moves both him and the girls forward in most cases. It's very creative, it's very painful, and he does his best. He's very pragmatic, as I mentioned. And really, his approach you're either going to love or hate. In some cases, I find myself not liking how he did things, of course, but it really comes down to how much shrapnel you can survive from these, bombs. Overall, I feel the story really just bleeds with enjoyment. It feels like they really aspire to do more than just kind of retell, like, the common thing is just make a story, put 4 or 5 girls in it, have a character who's really just there to say nothing and kind of watch, and then get all the characters to fall in love with him by the end of it. And it's pretty much like the standard formulaic means, and there's a lot of VNs that do that. There's way too many that do that simple thing, and Grisaia really pushed the edge. And this was back from, I think it was 2008, I'll double check that, I'll put it on the screen, when they decided to put this thing out and had everything written and completed. So they've been working on it probably since 2006, maybe 5. Definitely took more than a few years to put this all together, because there's, again, ton of writing, and overall the quality of the VN is, just superior. The music's very good, the characters are very well, understood and written, and there's no, I didn't find any spelling errors, but it's been through several translations, so I don't expect to find any. It's put together very well. Even the small things in, the engine of the VN is very competent. It just screams with polish, and I like that a lot, because there's a lot of really bad VNs, but I'm not going to go into that. And the story itself contained within the VN, of course, is fairly competent. It brings a lot of genres together. Obviously you have romance, obviously you have the eroge, obviously you have, a bit of mystery and trauma and tension, and it kind of brings this strange mix, this assortment of genres together very, very competently, which is something I can't say for pretty much, spilled my coffee, for pretty much any other VN that I've really experienced. And especially beyond that, as you go through the story, there is legitimate, little moments of realizations from other routes, or even kind of in the past or in the future if you're reading through again, that you get these small realizations of characters acting or saying some certain things some certain way, and it's very interesting because it opens up and elaborates on them, and it feels like the characters are continuous instead of more of a point on the timeline and then it's a separate timeline from then on there, which is the case because all the stories are, or all the heroine stories are independent, largely independent, but understanding the characters better as you go down them really opens up these nice little realizations that I don't think any other VN or really any story has done for me, which is, it just adds a little bit more to that replay or reread value, which it's just rare. I like it a lot. The only real problem is that the VN's length is very, very long, and sometimes it just feels like a 7-course meal. The first 3 or 4 are just sugar, literally just sugar, and the rest are hearty meats, like dinner. This is a terrible analogy. What I'm trying to say is that it feels very segmented, not because there's a passing of days so much so, but that the story's introduction, that, opening slice of life sequence, is so extensive, and then the rest of the other stories, which are again equal if not more length, are just a completely different tone from the rest, that it doesn't gel all that well, I suppose. It's written very well. All the stories are written very well. It's such a kind of red herring introduction that it makes you wonder why. And of course some of that is to, give you that tender space that you actually care about. But I do think it's drawn out. I honestly do think it's drawn out. Another issue. I mentioned the music was very good. The only problem with that is there's really only about 7 noticeable songs, and those noticeable songs are competent. The problem is, when you're sitting there for about 70 to 80 hours, you know those songs very well, and I basically got a 10-hour loop plus of each and every one, and they're used, some of them used more than others, so it was very frustrating to like, oh, well, here's the school song again, and oh, here's your theme, and all the characters have themes at the end, of course, but it's just a bit frustrating. And then the anime will use the songs again, which gets so many helpings of this song, or of these very few songs, and it's very frustrating. So, yeah, it's not really an issue of them being bad, it's just really overused. I wish they would have diversified their catalog. That would have been very nice. I probably should talk about the anime as well, I suppose would make sense, right? The anime is not good. It tried to cram in as much as it could. Unfortunately, the scriptwriter, Hideyuki Kuretsu, really wasn't given much to work with. He was told 13 episodes, and he said, hey, here's like 70 plus hours, can you get all of it in? And of course he said no, but what choice does he have? He's working his job. Which is fairly depressing, because I've seen him do better in the past. I can't remember what it is at the moment, but I've seen his name a few times before. He's done much better, but there was nothing that could have salvaged the story. If they would have... What they really could have done is make a single, the opening segment, and then one of the girls, probably the best one would have been Yumiko. Just make that the first season, and move forward from there, the first 13 episodes. That would have been competent, but they wanted to cram literally everything into it, and there's no way, and they retconned a bunch of stuff, and it didn't work very well, and there's a lot of things that were just ruined, and the anime looks fine, and the voice acting is fine, and overall, there's some scenes that looked like they were stolen from Bakemonogatari, I noticed, actually. But it looked very good, and it was competent. The problem was, the story was ass, because there's no way to repair something in such disrepair. It's completely destroyed. And none of it makes sense, and there's no attachment to the characters because you don't know them well enough, and it's just very frustrating to watch. So I would say, don't really watch the anime until you finish the game, even though it's supposed to be a marketing material for the VN, of course. Play the VN first, watch the anime, and then hate yourself for watching the anime. Instead of being a material, it's more of kind of like a bonus included disc for the game, which is frustrating, I suppose, because I want more people into this, because I think it's really, really good, even though there's like 20 VNs now, so I have to go through all of them, which is not something I realized back in 2017. I'm going to look that up. It's been at least 2 years since I started this series, and that's not even my earliest save, so I don't know when exactly I started this. I wish I would have made a day one save, so I knew exactly when I started this, because it's been a long time. I've taken my time to get through it, but holy hell. More importantly, I think the VN is very competent. It is certainly good for the normal crowd of people, the very small crowd of people who actually play VNs, and certainly for people looking to get more into VNs. Like, it's a very mature entrance to the VN world. It's a bit daunting, but I do think it's an experience you'd be remiss not to have for yourself, because it really just is that fantastic. I would give this probably... I have a very strict rating scale in my own mind, because I just have more perspective over things, I feel. And I really hate the scores that other people like on Mal give. It makes me mad. But that's a tangent. I'd probably give this like a 9. Like a 9, 9.5. It's very, very strong. It's probably the best VN I've ever read, but it's also the longest. So, yeah, if you're not looking for something that extensive, probably avoid it. But I think it's good. I really did have a good time with it. It's also fairly easy to find both on Steam and from the Denpasoft website. There's 2 versions to keep in mind. There is the Steam version, which is the edited and kind of toned down and no H-scene version, so I naturally don't recommend it, first because I haven't experienced it, so I can't. And I don't think any of those scenes are pivotal to understanding the characters. Kind of. I would say if you're 18 plus, play the Denpasoft version. If you're not 18 plus, I'd actually recommend you wait until you are 18 and then buy the Denpasoft version, because I think it's good enough to wait a few years to play it uncensored, is really what I'm trying to say, because I do think it is that good. I just don't like the changes that I know about, so yeah, just avoid the Steam version in my opinion, unless they change it in the future, then in case, yeah, go buy it, because then it's the same as the Denpasoft version, obviously. But yeah, it's overall just a very, very compelling and enjoyable experience. I had a great time with this VN. This is probably my favorite at the moment. Actually, there's maybe 1 or 2 that I would put above this, but it's a very, very good VN. It is too long. It is a little too long, but overall it's just a very, very, very enjoyable experience. You're going to have a good time with this. It's something you can casually work through, especially because a lot of the days are segmented naturally, so you can just move from day 1 to 2 and just put it on pause and come back to it, which is exactly what I did for a long time, until I started burning through them at the end, because I'm like, okay, I need to know everything. Once I got through 1 or 2 routes, it's like, I need to finish this. So, I had a great time. So that's why I wanted to kind of put the word out in my very small voice on this, website, of course. And I suppose speaking of the characters, you might be wondering, who is my favorite? Anyway, that's my opinion. Yeah, overall, just take care of yourself. Thanks for listening to the video. I know this is a bit more offhand. I wrote a script. I'm actually been kind of reading bullet points from the script. The problem is, I've read the script 5 times, and it just does not jive with me. I cannot do scripts in that fashion, so this is my interesting take on a script that I wrote. Yeah, hopefully it wasn't terrible. Maybe it won't even see production, who knows. Anyway, take care of yourself. Thanks for watching the whole thing. Feel free to sub and like and do all those YouTube things. I don't really care about them in general, but it just means more people will find my stuff, which I kind of do. You know, putting your voice out there. Simple stuff. I don't know where I'm going with this either. I'm just rambling again. I need to stop rambling. But yeah, just take care of yourself. Take it easy. Try to enjoy the week. Try to enjoy the month. Try to enjoy the year. And yeah. Peace.